The city never forgot the morning when a barefoot little girl stopped a millionaire in the middle of the street, but what happened before and after that moment is what truly mattered. It began on a cold gray dawn, the kind that squeezes the warmth out of every stone and soul alike. People hurried past each other with the dull urgency of routine, unaware that just a few steps away, fate was stitching together a moment that would change lives. The man in the immaculate suit, renowned, respected, envied, had built empires from numbers, decisions, and deals. But he had never known that a few soft words from a trembling, dirt-smudged child would undo him in ways no business loss ever could. If you believe kindness can rebuild the world, if you believe in second chances and forgotten hearts rediscovered, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these meaningful stories reach more souls. He had just dropped his daughter off at school, watching her run inside with her pink backpack bouncing behind her. That sight always softened him, reminding him there were things money couldn't replicate. As he walked toward his car, adjusting his cufflinks, he noticed movement near a building entrance, a small figure curled into itself, thin arms wrapped tightly around a tattered coat. At first, he assumed it was just another passerby's child waiting. But when she lifted her eyes toward him, something inside him stalled. Those were eyes too old for such a small face, eyes that had already learned the language of loneliness far too fluently. She stood slowly, almost hesitantly, as if afraid her movement alone would inconvenience him. She approached with tiny, unsure steps, her feet bare on the cold pavement, her hair tangled from nights spent wherever the world allowed. He instinctively reached for his wallet, the automatic response of someone accustomed to solving problems with wealth. But before he could pull out a single bill, she shook her head, her voice quiet yet steady as she murmured words so unexpected they struck him harder than any plea for help ever could. "I don't need money. I just need a hug like your daughter." In that moment, the world shrank to the space between them. Cars passed, people walked, city life pulsed around them, but nothing felt real except the ache in her voice. He hadn't expected to kneel. He hadn't expected his hands to tremble as he opened his arms. And he certainly hadn't expected her to collapse into him with the kind of hunger no meal could fill. As he wrapped his arms gently around her tiny frame, something broke inside him, something rigid, something that had been hardening for years as he climbed the mountain of success. He felt her heartbeat against his chest, fast, frightened, uncertain, and he realized that no child should ever have to ask for something so simple. Her story unfurled slowly, a few scattered words between shivers. She had been living with her mother in a rundown apartment until the mother fell ill, unable to work, unable to afford rent, forced onto the streets where survival overshadowed tenderness. The little girl wandered when her mother slept, looking for warmth, watching families through windows and imagining herself inside those worlds. She had seen him many times hugging his daughter, and today something inside her had cracked open with longing so deep she couldn't contain it anymore. He listened, and with each detail his heart tightened. He had spent years surrounded by meetings, profits, and deadlines while convincing himself he was a good man simply because he donated to charities. But now, holding this little stranger who trembled like a leaf, he felt the hollowness of those gestures. Kindness wasn't paperwork, it was presence. It was showing up. It was being human. He took her to a nearby cafe, not just to feed her but to give her a space where warmth didn't feel borrowed. She hesitated when he ordered food for her, as though afraid she didn't deserve such comfort. As she ate, he made phone calls, first to medical services, then social services, then to a few trusted friends who worked with children in crisis. At each step, he found himself more invested than he had ever been in any business venture. He wasn't just helping her, he was rediscovering parts of himself he didn't know were missing. What surprised him most was how his daughter reacted when he brought the little girl home later that afternoon. The two children bonded instantly, as though guided by an invisible thread of innocence. They colored together, played with dolls, exchanged shy smiles. His daughter offered her a pair of shoes without hesitation, placing them gently on the floor in front of her like a gift of pure acceptance. It was a sight that nearly brought him to tears, the generosity of a child putting adults to shame. Days turned into weeks. The girl and her mother received medical care, a temporary shelter, and eventually, with his help, a small apartment where safety wasn't a luxury. But the bond between him and the little girl didn't fade with circumstances. She visited often, greeted always with open arms. Slowly, laughter returned to her voice, and dreams returned to her eyes. He witnessed her transformation with something akin to awe, realizing kindness wasn't a miracle, it was a chain reaction. One hug had changed everything. As time passed, he also transformed. The sterile walls of his office filled with drawings from both girls. His business meetings became shorter, his family dinners longer. He attended charity events not as a benefactor but as a volunteer. And whenever he spoke to crowds, he told them the truth he had learned the hard way. The world doesn't change when you donate money. It changes when you give your heart. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share the video, and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the goodness we often forget. Your engagement truly keeps these messages alive. Before you watch the ending, tell me in the comments, what does kindness mean to you personally? In the end, what the city remembered most wasn't the millionaire or the money he had. It was the image of a man in a suit kneeling on a cold street, hugging a barefoot little girl as though she were his own, an image that proved humanity still breathes beneath the noise of life. And somewhere deep inside, that little girl grew up with the knowledge that when the world had turned its back on her, one person didn't just give her help, he gave her hope. And sometimes, hope is the greatest wealth of all.